Hi, I'm Ray.
And I'm Steph.
And this is the SciComm Hotline,
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
Shimmy.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Steph. Is this Shimmy? This is Shimmy, right?
Yeah, shimmying.
Yeah.
I've been watching Dancing with the Stars, and so now I just wish I was on Dancing with the Stars.
I've not watched it.
I know I've been watching it. Yeah. I've been watching it for a long time. Like that was a thing that like I would sit down and like with my mom and like watch, and then like I don't know if you ever see those memes from like the Olympics where someone's just like eating potato chips and like someone takes a step up, oh, loser, and it's just like. Like me like pretending that I'm like a ballroom expert, just like criticizing these stars.
Right. You were a gymnast though, so.
I was a gymnast, so I do know how to like, at least when it comes to like gymnastics in the Olympics, I know a thing or two of like what they're looking for. But for ballroom dancing, no.
Growing up, my version of that with my mom was this like German voice. Yeah, it was like, I can't remember ARDZDF, one of those.
Yeah, what do you mean German voice? Like The Voice, like where they turn their chairs?
Yeah,
for, like,
I can't remember what the name was in Germany, but they had like a version of that. But because my parents were students in Germany, so they lived there. I was born there. We came back to Iran growing up here, but like the satellite TV was always like usually either German TV or like really like fun, sad Turkish drama. It was like one of those two.
Yeah.
That
is very interesting.
I know.
But anyways,
what have you hated on last week or so?
Yeah, I don't think I have some good hates. Good hates in the sense that I went to Jackson Wild. The one year that I decided to like finally go back is the year that you cannot attend. But it was really great. I was having like extreme imposter syndrome because I was like, man, everyone is just like so cool. Everyone's doing really cool projects. Everyone for sure, because it's kind of like still like a work networking thing.
Yeah. You want to tell the audience what it is, like what kind of work and network and everything, like a little bit about Jackson?
Yeah. So Jackson Wild is a summit where it's like conservation wildlife filmmakers attend. So you think of like Blue Chip, Nat Geo, like all those like beautiful footage that we see of like wildlife. And so Ray and I were Media Lab fellows in 2019. That's how we met. We bonded over both dancing in front of each other when we got off the airport, and that's how we instantly became friends. But it was like a 10-day intensive like filmmaking workshop where we just it kind of opened the doors for us as like this as an industry that we can work in. But I haven't been since then because it's very expensive. It's like not really accessible in that sense in terms of like $1,000 to like just for registration. And then going to Jackson, Wyoming is expensive in and of itself because it's like a bougie place. Even though it's like wild outdoorsy, it's still a very bougie place. So it's not accessible. So the way that I was able to go again was to be a volunteer.
Right.
So yeah, but I wanted to go again because for those listeners that have been listening for a bit, Ray and I are in this weird transition period. So we're just trying to like reconnect with people, just to network, find new opportunities, and just put ourselves back into these spaces as like people that we can work with. So I did just that. So I was like hating on just like how cool everybody is and also like how severe my imposter syndrome was. But I left that feeling like, oh, I really do admire this community. Everyone is so down to earth. Everyone's super helpful and caring. And it's just like good people. And I think that's something that you and I talk about a lot. It's just like, we want to work with people that like we like, like we want to work with cool people. We want to be doing cool things. And it's really, not always, but like, it's great to leave an area where you feel inspired or feel motivated or feel like welcomed and kind of just like lifted up my spirits.
Right. That's always nice about Jackson. Does feel every year that like dose of energy that you need to go on for the rest of the year, and that like hating on how great everyone is kind of like pushes you to do things better and kind of like, push your boundaries on being creative and everything, which I always appreciated. Yeah, I lost my corporate sugar daddy this year, so was not able to go. But who knows? Next year, maybe someone will fund both of us to go. Corporate sugar
Yeah.
daddies, show yourselves.
Please, please, please. But yeah, what are you hating on?
I so I decided I was like really doing too much work because I'm like on one hand like networking, doing some freelancing stuff, doing proposals, looking up stuff. It's been a bit too much, and I think like you telling me like also to take this time to also like enjoy life and be in the moment and stuff like that. I thought I'm gonna do this 2-day at home like meditation mindfulness retreat. So digitally detox myself, not feel like I have to be productive for social media and that kind of stuff. So I sat and I did my meditation, and in my head I was trying to think of, oh, what am I thinking? What emotions are coming? And as these like emotions came, like something came, and I was like, oh, that like this coffee is so beautiful. Look at these colors. And the first thought that I had was like taking a picture of it for social media. And then I was like, no, Ray, this is not for social media. And I like wrote it down in my notebook. I did a drawing of it. It's like really shit drawing. And I'm like, it's okay, because you are not for the internet. And then I was like, wow, that's beautiful. I should post that. And I was
I
like,
am so inspirational.
so inspiration. And I was like, dude, fucking no, that's like a whole point of it. It's not for social media. And then I was like, wow, this conversation about this not being for social media and you can't not make it be for social media should go on social media. It just became this hell circle of this is not for social media, so it should be for social media. And at the end I was like, wow, yeah, okay, this is so dysfunctional. That's my hate. That's my meditation hate. And Jesus, what the fuck is wrong with us?
No, but yeah, I think because we're just so online that like we do perform a little online, so it is a sense of like yeah, just the performative action of ourselves and how living our life becomes currency and everything is content.
Everything is
Everything is content, and also our work is content, so there's no like clear separation. I have a girlfriend who she works in like the IT space, but she doesn't have social media at all. And I was like, oh, I wish I can do that. I wish I can like separate that, but it's hard since a lot of the stuff that we do is for like social media,
right.
or like the YouTube space. So just like everything is content. So I feel
know.
you. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I'm going to use this to also jump us into, we're going to finally be talking about AI. And it's interesting that you say how you wish you could just like delete, be done with it. Like there was a part of me that was like, okay, for this like retreat, I'm actually gonna like not use social media. And I was like, well, I actually can't, because as you know, to pitch some ideas and stuff, I've been told that I need a bigger following on my social media. And I have like, at the time I had like 2 something K. Now I have like 3K. That is like nowhere close to anything that people would be like, oh, wow, yeah, you seem like you have like an established big community, right? So yeah, make something, I'm sure your audience will be there. Like I have to prove that I have an audience. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing where I'm going to ask ChatGPT to give me a 30-day plan to go viral, right? And so I typed in and I was like, give me a 30-day plan to go viral. And it gave me this like dry, like pages of like, day 1, like find a good hook. Day 2, do this. Day 3, like start a poll, like stuff like that. And I was like, okay, that's actually not that helpful. And then I did it another time. I was like a day later, I was like, give me a plan. And like, it was a little different. It was, spend the first few days thinking about your audience, then start looking into this and this and this. And then it gave me the same kind of like, use a carousel. Now see what was your viral content and then do that. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to think of a lot of my own ideas and I'm going to see how these are guidelines that I could use to fit it in. So I'm not like saying like, okay, what did it say exactly for day one? But like, I'm trying to think of ideas for day one that is like inspired by the ChatGPT. And honestly, it's been fun making it. It's a lot of work and I am not going viral. I am like nowhere close. Like I might have like an extra, it's been a week now. I might have like an extra 10 followers, which is also hilarious, but it's been so fun seeing like how the community is like, yay, you got this. We're going to do this. It's been really fun. And at the same time, I'm like, that's probably like a little bit like AI in a nutshell where we're like, this is going to be the future doing all these things. And it's like, no, it's not that creative. It's not that good. It's going to give you the bare bone or some helpful things that your creativity and you have to fill it in and you have to fix it and all of that. So the beginning of my AI thoughts.
Yeah. So we already recorded another episode about this, but of course it's always disjointed. But I think but I guess we wanted to talk about this because, yeah, like Ray and I just have a lot of conversations of like, is it good to use AI? Is it not good to use AI? So at Jackson Wild, there was a panel about AI used in like conservation wildlife filmmaking. And so it was like a panel of like 3 people, and all 3 of them have platforms or jobs or whatever. Like they have organizations that they work for or made that they use AI for filmmaking. But one of the panelists, his approach was very more like ethics aligned. Like his ethics or his moral code or whatever was kind of like the North Star of their AI organization. So one thing that was super interesting that he said was like, this is how we see where AI fits in. If you can go outside and film it right now, then we should be using people to do that.
Right.
But say if you can't do something, then that's where like AI will be beneficial. Because one point that he made was like, okay, we're already using like CGI for a lot of these things, for like a lot of like Hollywood productions or just, regular video productions. But usually CGI is there to like make something that wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And so like AI could be used as a tool to like speed up that production. But it's funny to hear him say that, and then like literally the other panelist that's there like presents this idea of like, I just made like this 3-minute video with Sora of like a chicken's POV of like being born to being in a food chain, kind of, like whatever. Like it was a whole video that he made just using AI, and it was from like a chicken's POV. And so and they're like, this is amazing. Look at this. Like we did this in a matter of days. This would have taken blah, 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 blah. And so like some of the questions that pop up is AI isn't going anywhere. It's being used in every single aspect of everything that has to do with being on the internet.
Right.
And it kind of feels like we as people don't really have power in using it because it is incorporated into everything. And also we're now kind of like in a weird shift where like we got like a lot like, we have these CEOs of these tech companies schmoozing with the president, at least in like the United States. They control a lot of stuff. So I feel like there's no escaping it. And with some filmmakers that I talk to, like people that are very like conservation, very nature first, are and also maybe people first of just like, we're building these huge ass data centers next to impoverished communities that are adding to like light pollution, sound pollution, taking up water, also polluting the water.
Driving up prices and everything.
Driving up electricity prices. Correct. I shouted them out before, but in the past podcast, More Perfect Union YouTube channel has been kind of like my go-to place to kind of get stories about this. So we have that aspect, and also, the common quote that we get of just like, one search on AI is equal to like 1 bottle of water. So there's that aspect. Right. Then there's also an aspect with like another friend that I've had where And even some filmmakers, like maybe like more entry-level filmmakers that I was connecting with, because there were like other volunteers there, kind of like early career people. And they're like, how AI presents innovation and productivity is coming at the cost of like new entry-level job positions. It's
Right.
taking that away because it's just like, oh, we're saving money by using AI to do our sound design, do our sound mixing, or like enhance our audio or blah, 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 blah. Those are usually like entry-level kind of job positions that are kind of at jeopardy.
Right.
The final thing that I do want to say, though, is that me as like an individual person, and even talking to some like other like one-man band kind of people, where like they, like for a lot of the freelance stuff that I do, where I'm doing everything from beginning to end by myself, like I use AI, like guilt, you know, like it makes me feel a little bit shameful and dirty because I know I have a lot of people in my community that are very highly against it. But like as someone who like is a one-man band, like it really does help with my production processes. And it is because it's increasing productivity,
Right.
which also leads to kind of like the existential crisis that we have of just like, why is everything content? Why does everything have to be in the name of like productivity? And like,
Right. So
and
true.
what can we do about it? What are we doing about it? So that's like my TED talk.
Right. Even we are right now using like Riverside, which is we heavily use AI for our podcast. Like we're not making money out of this. We're not being paid to do this. You're paying for Riverside and all of that, so you want to make the most out of it, which means it makes editing easy. It makes editing the sound easier. It sometimes like takes out clips out of it for us to post on social media. All of that are things that I mean, in an ideal world, even though we might not have like the time or energy and money or anything, like we could have hired someone to do all of that, but we don't have the money and all of that kind of thing. So it ends up falling on AI, which is sad and true and everything at the same time. And that's just like how complicated AI is. But while you were talking, it kind of reminded me of, do you know the Oatmeal, the comic? He just makes a
Maybe.
lot of like comics. It's like this. If you see it, you know it.
Is it the alien dude?
No,
No.
that's
Okay.
Nathan or something. So he's like
Yeah.
this, like the round faces, round eyes. When you see it, you would know it. It's really
Okay.
funny.
I'm gonna
And
look it up while you keep going.
yeah, look it up, look it up. You can see which one it is. And I think he had the latest post was about AI, and he goes out down into the detail of like there is thing, and okay, this is my interpretation of what he said. So you might read it and be like, this is not what he said. So um there is something about like the process of making art, right, that we also react to. So there's something about me seeing like David Attenborough's like seals falling from this like iceberg or like the mount, yeah, it's like an iceberg or something, and I'm like not only seeing that and being shocked, but I'm also like, oh my god, the people that are filming this and the fact that this is real and this is actually happening and they are experiencing that, all of that kind of stuff, the process. And then you're like, I want to see the behind the scene. I want to know who are the people, right? Or the thing that he was describing was this picture of, there's like a very big field of grass and there's a woman, it's a painting, she's kind of like on the grass, kind of like crawling a little bit. And he was talking about like how she was a survivor of polio. And in this image, she's kind of like crawling towards that, like the house or the field or something. And he grew up like with a carer that had experienced polio. So for him, uh, knowing that as the artist was making this, he drew like every single blade of grass.
Wow.
Right. So as she's crawling, this painter is also going through the hard effort of drawing every single blade of grass. And that means something. Or you would be like, with Jurassic Park, like you see that, it's like, you're like, someone designed that. It's not real, but someone put this together. And I'm like, whoa, like how insane is that? The problem with AI is that process is not really there, right? Like, prompt writing is not the same. Prompt writing is just it's not the same as thinking about drawing every blade of grass. It's not about designing this eye of the T-Rex and this color that goes here and how it moves here and how it shapes and all of that. And as audiences, I think for me, like it means so much to know what was the process behind making something rather than just like the AI art that I see. At the same time, he was talking about like I draw like these subjects. Like I don't do background. I don't know how to draw backgrounds. So what are the things that AI can do that are like, maybe I'll call it like it's like less meaningful, right? Like what is a background that AI can help me do? Or what is like I'm trying to like draw a few things and I can find reference pictures for it. So I'm actually having AI give me a reference picture with a certain angle so that then I can draw it, right? So what are the ways that you can kind of keep the process and the meaning behind it while also ask AI to help you in that process, but not take over the meaning?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting conversation because, like, yeah, AI is just a topic that's like always evolving on my feed. And so one podcast that I was listening to mentioned of just kind of like how AI does reduce the barrier to entry to like art. People that don't have access to high tech software or people that don't have access to going to a filmmaking school or something like that or an art school, we now have tools that can like reduce that barrier. But then, yeah, it kind of has like that conversation of just that kind of started off when AI first became big, or at least generative AI imaging became big, was how it was trained on everyone's art without like compensation or being paid.
Right.
And the things that like these friends were talking about of just, and it also makes me think of like the panel that I was listening to where the panelist mentioned that like he thinks that there's going to be kind of like a push for authenticity. We always talk about authenticity. Another conversation I want to talk about is kind of like the commodification of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
But he was saying that like future things are going to have labels where it was made like human made, it's going to be like, how it's like organic or like
Non-GMO, organic.
grass fed. Yeah, exactly. Non-GMO contains no toxics. It's going to be like, this is a human made, no AI, like AI
Right.
free. Like there's going to be a push for that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I also do was I watch a lot of like design YouTube. Like I and just because some of the stuff that I do, I use Canva and whatever, but I'm like, I'm not a trained graphic designer, but tools like Canva that kind of use like a lot of like AI stuff to kind of like make it easy for people to like do things. But I still want to understand the basics of design of like having the right color, having the right composition. So I watch a lot of design YouTubers and some of them were showing how like there's people that lean into it of just like, okay, AI isn't going anywhere. So how can I use this to help with being a co-creator or kind of like what you're doing, what you mentioned in your story earlier of just like, maybe it can help me with references or maybe it can like help me with ideation. But at the end of the day, it's still not perfect enough that it still needs the human eye to be like, this is what makes it good. Cause like an AI, like the AI is only being trained on like making and blurring stuff together, but like a designer is like the typography can invoke this emotion. Like this, the way that we have negative space can invoke another kind of emotion. Like this is the science or the psychology of like why we made these decisions with these decisions that I think that like people that do use AI that are just prompting things in just to give them the final thing are not really thinking about like, yeah, like the process, the intellectual process and the training that really takes to like decipher and discern what makes something good or not based
Mm-hmm.
off of like our prior knowledge. But like if AI is being trained on this knowledge, like it eventually
Right.
could get there.
Right. It's just that there's also like the cycle of you are designing things based on all the other things that exist. So like AI art, you see it and it kind of like starts to feel the same. And there's like very little creativity and originality. I assume same is going to happen to design. But kind of like using that, let's go through some areas of science communication where we use AI in or don't use AI in, or like how do we use it in our different work? So I'm gonna ask you as like a media producer, what are the different places you use AI?
Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a one-man band.
Mhm.
So like Adobe has like an audio enhancer for podcasting, and I use it a lot for my videos.
Right.
Okay, so there's a corporate client that I'm working on right now, and it's a very fast moving thing, and it's only one of me, and I'm managing a team of people. And so I have used ChatGPT to kind of like help me with my pre-production in terms of like I conducted 15 different pre-interviews, and now I have to go shoot 15 different on-location interviews. I don't like I don't want to sit through all half-hour interviews again to like make my notes of what are the questions I should ask? How do I ask the question in a way that's going to get the interviewee to say what I need them to say in order for me to meet the structure or the storytelling structure that I have pitched to this client that they want for their video campaign? So
Right.
I transcribe the interviews, I sent it to ChatGPT, I give them like the brief of the client work, I let them know the story structure that I proposed, which they also kind of helped me propose and shape
Right.
a little bit.
Right.
Or I did do it like initially, but then based on like the client feedback, ChatGPT kind of helped me massage that story
Yeah.
structure and then kind of let them know like the boundaries of like, this is the tone that I want. This is the audience that we have. This is going to be for a 2 to 3 minute video. These are all the pre-interviews. Help me come up with an interview workflow where I make sure that I'm getting the quotes that I need from them based off of the pre-interview quotes from this transcript that I'm providing you.
But that's actually really smart.
Yeah. So like part of me like that's a lot of fucking time. If I were to sit down to like really do that on my own without like a pressure of meeting a tight deadline, it can easily be like a week of me doing this. And I'm
Right.
able to at least do the first 3 interviews and get it prepped and ready within like a day or two,
Right.
like
Right.
a day.
Right.
And so like part of me is like, okay, is that cheating? Is this, how does this look like? And then like also with other conversations that I had with like other editorial organization was
Mhm.
very like hard no on using AI. But then some producers start like leveraging of like, okay, I filmed this interview, but I filmed it I didn't film it wide enough. Like if I can reduce the thing of it and use generative imaging to like fill in the space of it, or a lot of other producers also use it for pre-production organization. So like where do we reveal the transparency of like when we're using AI or how we're using AI in our pre-production if we're going to have a label that said AI free on our
Right.
videos?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I remember there's some applications that are also like, did you use AI? And I'm like, if you ask that, you need to have a box where I can explain I use it to reduce the number of words from this to this. Like I didn't use it to like respond to this very like important question, right? Um, Similar things with like if organizations are like don't use AI, would you say like, well, a lot of these like applications, if I'm editing my audio to sound clear, it's AI doing it, but it's not it's not taking other people's work. So what do you mean exactly? Like I can't use AI? Are you meaning in like creation of like new content, or is it in like editing in some way, or what are yeah.
I think I wanted to point out the fact of just like even the way that we're using AI in our common language, knowing that we work in the science space, I think also how AI has been used as a catch-all term for a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. Because
Right.
it's like, okay, ChatGPT is a large language model. Like a lot of other scientists that are using stuff for like healthcare or like security systems are using like machine learning.
Right.
And so like I think that also kind of helps not helps that also blurs the language of how we talk about AI and like what's good and what's not because like within the scientific domain like yeah, like machine learning has been around for forever. Like
Right.
large language models have also been around for some time, not for forever, but these both
Mhm.
both of these things have been around for some time. But now if we've gotten to the commercialization of it, and I think it's just like like generative AI is I think the thing that we should be saying. I think it's generative AI.
Right.
Because but then that also, I don't know, this also kind of goes into like a conversation or a rabbit hole that we can talk about of just how like, okay, in that like we're kind of in this weird point that I've heard from other people of just like we're always going through like these cycles of like technological advancements of like when the telephone arrived, like women that were doing the plugging thing lost their jobs, but then they found new jobs. Like when we went from the typewriter to a computer, like
Mhm.
the secretary that were transcribing lost their jobs, and then it went into like new, so like we're always going through like cycles of like technological innovation. So like, is this just another cycle of technical innovation where people have posted questions that we're like going to be losing our jobs, but is that definitive?
Right.
Like, or are we just going to have to adapt into the new jobs that it could potentially provide? But I think that
Right.
what the concern is that like it, it, yeah, I guess like what would those future jobs be, and what would
Right.
that look like within science communication?
Plus, like there's like so much ethics and like copyright issues involved in this, where you're like some of like the other technologies that came was like the technology was a tool with like generative AI is like other people's intellectual property that you're taking, making it seem like a new thing and feeding it to people. So what's going to happen to those people? Yeah, there's like a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I feel like there's like the use of it in science communication. Some of it is like in that pre-production that you're doing and the interviews and then the creation where you have like, yeah, editing and stuff like that. And I remember like the other part that I used a lot was when I was doing like a social media campaign for something. Um, I so when you want to be strategic, right? If you have a message, you don't want to be like, oh, just like give like I'm just gonna look up like any conservation example to get people to understand conservation and art can go together if you're talking about hope, for example. So looking that up is very hard. That like give me a conservation initiative that involves like eagles because I'm specifically looking into eagles because that's what the episode is about. So that's what my social media content is going to be about. But also art is involved because I'm trying to get my audiences to like get into doing art, but also it should be hopeful. That's not something like Google can easily give you, but
Mhm.
ChatGPT is actually fairly good at being like, oh, there were like 3 conservation initiatives and like one of them like people in the town got in and started making like statues of eagles. The other one was like here in a school where kids did that. The other one is like this nonprofit that goes into communities and they do drawings of eagles, right? It just like makes tailored examples for strategic communication, like finding that so much easier.
Mhm.
And I would love for someone to do the calculation where there's a part of me that is like, okay, I know like ChatGPT using is bad, right? But there's a part of me that is like, this could be like one thing that I look up, or it could be a day of me using Google to try to figure out what's the right example. And that means using my this and that and looking things up. Can someone like do a comparison so that I could also know like, is that better or worse? And I don't know.
I think there is something like that already. So my friend,
Ooh.
um, okay, so my friend is working as like a science communicator for pretty much like a dog whistle like AI company. And
Uh-huh.
so I'll link it in our show notes. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they essentially, I don't know if they did the research or it was another group that researched this, where they were trying to find a fair comparison to ask that, because it's like, okay, we can't comparing AI use or generative AI use with consumption of water. Again, it's like it's not really like it's almost like a step removed. Like people know there's an impending doom. Sometimes like we know that climate change is going to affect us, but also because of like our day to day and like we just want to fucking live, you know, like we kind of like put our blinders on of just kind of feeling like, okay, that's too big of a thing. Let me just focus on my thing. But one aspect that they thought would be a better comparison to like talk about like the harms of using generative AI, or not the harms, but at least like the big implications of using AI is like in realms of losing our potential jobs, is how they compared it to like human time. So like when ChatGPT first started, or like, you know, whatever, when ChatGPT's type of technology first started, it probably took them like hours to like answer one prompt.
Right.
And so that's kind of like on the left hand side of like our scale. But then within the past 5 years, it's already grown exponentially to like, okay, what was a simple task that took this computer 1 hour to do now take, or not 1 hour, like maybe hours to do now takes several minutes. And so comparing that to like human time, we're probably at a point where it's almost kind of like we're kind of the same, depending on like what the task is. But knowing the trend has been exponential, they're projecting that like within another 5 years, it's going to be an even steeper exponential growth of just like things that took us 5 hours, 10 hours of just like human time to do. ChatGPT or generative AI stuff will take several minutes.
Right.
You know? So, but I think, I don't know if, I think that's just comparing to time, but I think they're still lacking the amount of energy it's going to take to do it. If we're like,
right. Because like I'm kind of curious to know, like, is it also becoming more efficient in terms of energy use, right? Like as it's becoming more developed, does that mean it's not now eating like 100 bottle of water? Is it going to be less bottle of water? But at the same time, you have like, I think the example that you use like makes me think of like the Nobel Prize this year, the last year was like on protein folding, and I think these kind of stuff took like years and years to figure out how these protein foldings like would work, and then with AI that amount of time became like so much less, which on one hand I'm like, okay, what about the time and energy saved doing that, but also the future lives saved? So I feel like there's also like an ethical priority of like, am I using AI to figure out this like protein folding, or my stupid dumb question of like, should I wear this yellow hat? But if I want to find this other version of this that is this and this, how would I look in this app? Like should we have a don't look it up for that? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's like another part of the conversation that's being had on there on online too. It's just kind of like, okay, are we offloading our critical thinking to ChatGPT, or are we still using our brains and using it as a tool to like co-create and help with like productivity? So I think that's like where we can get into another conversation that's like not really psychom, but it's just like, you know, like using it as our therapist, like using it for there is I think, I don't know if you sent me this reel, or maybe I saw someone else send me this reel of like this guy walks into the grocery store and he was just like, the cashier was just like, oh, how are you? And he's like, ChatGPT, like this person in the grocery store asked me how I am. How do I answer back? And he's like, oh, just keep it simple. Like just say good you. And then he's like, good you. And then the other guy's like, he responded, good you. How do I respond back to this guy? You know?
It goes on forever.
Yeah. So it's just like, you know, there is kind of like, that's an extreme version that's used for comedic purposes, but there's people that are offloading like their critical thinking, their emotional intellect to using and relying on these devices. And like, also like, what is that name when you like, what is that term when you like, is it like you amorphosize it? Like when you give the, like, have you ever seen the movie Her?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just kind of like
as a personality, like
yeah,
as a
like you're giving your chat like people are naming their chats, and they're also like treating it as if it's another person when it's just like a mirror to like us as a society. And then like the final note that I want to say, I totally forgot. There was one more note that I wanted to say. Oh, it makes me think of, I don't know if you're watching South Park this season.
I have not. but
Oh my
I've
goodness,
read a lot of stuff about it. A lot of
it's really great this season. Where one of the main characters, whatever, was using ChatGPT to um come up with like a business proposal for like his weed farm.
uh-huh.
But at least South Park's the creators, their commentary on ChatGPT on like how I interpreted it was just kind of like how ChatGPT is like a yes man. Like
Yeah,
whatever you say, they're like, "Oh my god, that's a great idea. Like this is how you would go about it. Oh my god, you're such a genius. Like this is what you should do about it." And I even
right.
noticed that in some of the stuff when I reviewed the questions that ChatGPT gave me for like the interview flow, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not really liking this. Can we do that?" And like, "You
Great
have a great
idea.
eye." Yeah, exactly. Great idea. I can totally see that. Like, let's do this, you know? So it's like that yes man
Yeah,
element can kind of give like the wrong people the false hope, the false hope that they can accomplish a lot. But it's just like,
right.
no, let's just leave it to the professionals.
Can I tell you one of the more dangerous sides of this?
Yeah.
I'm dealing with this like health stuff, and I was asking ChatGPT, like I think in my head, I wanted it to be something, the diagnosis, and not another thing. And the way I was asking it was, I have this symptom, I think is this.
Mm,
What do you think? And it was
mm,
like, yes, what a great observation. And da da da
mm,
da da. And like as I'm
mm-hmm,
reading, I'm like, I know what is happening here. Like I am like I think I have like enough critical thinking and awareness of like this whole dynamic to know what is happening. I know this is not necessarily the diagnosis. I know this is all it's like designed for confirmation bias, right? Like
mm-hmm,
even the way you ask questions. This in some ways it's like the same with Google, right? Like if you Google chocolate is good, like let's say you love chocolate, right? You want to buy chocolate. So you're not gonna say chocolate is bad for you. You're gonna say chocolate is good for you. And then all these articles come out like chocolate is good for you, right? Rather than being like chocolate like kills you. So the way you ask questions is also like I think a very important like media literacy thing. Like how like instead of being like, how is chocolate for health? Right? How do you
mm-hmm.
ask these neutral questions? And ChatGPT is so like good in air quotations for confirmation bias and like motivated reasoning where it justifies the things that you want to believe in. So I'm like, I have this symptom. I think it's this. And it's like, yes, great observation. It's probably this. And that's just dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, because that makes me think of, okay, like what are the future things that we're using it for? There's this one journalist, science journalist that I've been following who's been trying to like promote her course on like how to fact check with AI. And there's also like not YouTubers, but like other social media people. One of them was like specifically started a nonprofit on media literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of like the confirmation bias that you just mentioned, like the motivated reasoning, that that still happens even without AI. But now
Right.
Google has included their AI responses or like their
Right.
summaries and that you can like barely opt out of. So the real need and push for like media literacy and understanding how to do research, how to look up questions, and like how to even ask good questions. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
like some of the conversations that were out there in terms of like future jobs that are out there. It's just like a prompt engineer, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
And yeah, so it's just like, you know, how do you ask the right questions to avoid, and also knowing the process, like the importance of having people and understanding like the sacredness of what it takes of a process to like be able to then know the type of question you should be asking and how to do your own guardrails of like when to know things are,
Right.
is it hallucinating or is it not, or is this confirming my confirmation bias or is it not? Because
Yeah.
if it wasn't for me having to learn how to be a good producer by like before the chat GPT times, then I wouldn't. Maybe I'm just like blowing smoke up my butt at this point, but like at least, you know, like at least when for me giving directions to ChatGPT, I can still be a producer and directing it and train, not training, but like treating my AI as like an assistant of like what I need, but
Right.
still having the final say. Where instead of just like offloading our critical thinking and just taking everything verbatim.
Yeah. I think what this also connects is how we do research with ChatGPT as like science communication researchers too. I've noticed like when you start experimenting first with ChatGPT very easily, like very early on, you start realizing it hallucinates research and citations and it's just like so convincing. Like it writes the name and all the authors and I know like the authors and I know similar things that they've written and I'm like, oh, that sounds about right. And you look it up and it just like does not exist. And one of the things that I found it to be very helpful in doing, so when I was writing this paper for the Academies of Sciences, is a sneeze? But it's muted, so I did the voice for you.
Son of a
so this
bitch.
so this paper that I was doing for Academies of Sciences, it was like on sustainable like digital science communication and outreach. And one of the things that was helpful, so initially I had my own draft, right? I was like, I'm going to talk about these are the topics, this is my structure and everything. And then once I was done, one of the things that I asked ChatGPT was that if I want to write a landscape about digital media, what would you include? And I think the human problem, not problem, the human nature of knowledge is that you do not know what you don't know, right? So if you know what to look up, like how does social media, TikTok, all of that in science communication work? How do you use VR, AR, da 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 da. But there's like stuff that you don't know that you don't know. So it's hard to ask it. So when you have these kind of more open questions of like, what are topics I should include? Then that's like where ChatGPT was like, oh, like also gaming and Minecraft and like Pokemon Go and all these other ways that we were doing science communication. And I was like, oh my God, I totally missed that part. So I ended up like adding this whole other section on like, gaming and all the ways we do science communication through that. But also this was a realm I was less familiar with. So ChatGPT was very helpful in telling me like, check out this, check out that. Also giving me a lot of, citations and spaces that did not exist. So it's using the suggestions with intense fact checking of sources. So what I would usually do is just like pick up what it said and then look up my own citations. And then the other side of it would be there's stuff like I forgot, there are like specific like like ChatGPT plugins that like consensus that looks up research for you, and that one hallucinates less. It actually gives you actual research. So if I'm writing something and I'm like, I know this is a thing, I can't remember what the research is to cite it, then I can go to consensus and be like, what was a research that did that and said this and someone experimented that, and it's easier for you to find it. So I found those things to be helpful, but I'm also, yeah, like a part of me is like really worried of it taking over my like this ease of how it works. I don't think I'm gonna go there, but I hope it doesn't happen. At the same time, like you talking about production, I'm kind of like I'm glad I had to do research the way I did it and like learn how to write drafts. Thank you, Michelle Shoemate, my advisor and during my PhD, who was like the best person to be like, here's how you start drafting, like telling me how to even like draft things, thinking strategically about that. So that part is like, it's becoming like a very, what do you call it? Like intuitive way of just like starting writing. And I don't even want ChatGPT to take over that. Plus, I think one of the things we also want to do is making scientific writing and a lot of these kind of stuff easier for people. So how can I be creative in the way that I'm drafting my structure? I doubt that ChatGPT would be very good at being creative on things that would actually be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's where we are right now in just terms of figure out like where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line for things? So it's like, okay, we use Grammarly to like fact check ourselves, but it still shouldn't take away the training that it takes to like actually write a good essay. But I feel like it goes back to kind of like the conversation of having of like how we're using AI as like an umbrella term. Because like even thinking of like how we even do research, there are other apps or like web apps that I've like come across where like the way you train your like model is that like, you give its parameters and you feed it the information. So for instance, in looking up citations, there have been other, I forgot what their platforms are, but it's just like they're only looking at published work, and it shows you like how they're connected to each other. So that's like a way that you can find like, hey, this is the main paper that I'm citing or basing off my research on. What are like, it looks at its citations and everyone else's citations, and is able to create this huge network and map. So it kind of tells you the other areas in which is connected. So I'm like, oh, that's really helpful. Have you used NotebookLM?
No, what's that?
Oh man, I don't know if it's a Google thing or not, but essentially it's like your own little ChatGPT, more concise. But you feed it the specific papers that you want and it can summarize it for you, but then it also has these two robots that like will make a podcast based on your like whatever you fed it. And it literally sounds like they literally like do you know Joss and I think his name is Adam from or Derek, I
Yeah.
forgot his name, from
Yeah.
Howtown. Like they had a video recently, not recently, but most recently, of like where people will accuse of like, hey, they kind of sound like AI. Are these two people like AI? But it's because like the Notebook LM like like they trained their little robot to like have like make it sound like conversation of like, yeah, like, you know, like Stephanie was looking up this paper about like how scientists are perceived online, and you know, this poses the question of like, does this, you know, like they like literally a fully fucking produced podcast based on like the papers that I was sending it to like summarize it for me. So then like instead of, you know, I guess this is where I'm outsourcing my like this is my fault, not fault, yeah, I guess a fault, whatever, my shortcoming of like outsourcing my critical thinking of just like instead of taking the time to like read the papers, I was like, can you just like there's these 10 papers I'm interested in, can you summarize them to me, and I want to listen to it as like a podcast.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know, I was just going all over the place of like all these examples that made me think of it.
Yeah. I mean, so we talked a little about like production, a little about research, a little about all over the place. I think one of the things that might be relevant right now with all the layoffs and everything is job search. Do you have I have some thoughts about like the ways I use ChatGPT for like networking, freelancing, job search, stuff like that. Do you have some in mind?
I have some in mind that I'm not proud of, so maybe you start. Also, we're already at like 52 minutes. I guess do we?
Okay, this could be a mini wrap up of like, y'all, if you're
Okay.
looking for a job. One of the ways I've found this to be very helpful is you look up like I want to like send like my workshop information to different like possible clients or my skills and stuff. And sometimes it's I know names and I know places, but I'm like, okay, like I want them to all be somewhere. I want to know like this client is really good, but who are the other ones that are like it? So what I ended up doing is actually like asking ChatGPT to give me a list of clients or like of organizations that are working in this field, that have fellows in this field, and tell me who's like the contact or give me their website. And it gives me something like an Excel sheet where I have the list of these companies that are not like everyone. It's like very specific companies that I want to pitch myself to with their emails, with their website. And I'm like, you know what? It's a list of 20. I'm going to just start there. And that has been like very helpful in just like getting me started and my networking. That's just like one of the things that I use.
Yeah, I think like the moral, not the moral of the story, but I guess like the two ways that we've been talking about, when are we like outsourcing our creativity and when are we using it as like an assistant to like do all the searching for us? And then like how do we discern from that?
Right.
Like another TikTok that I saw about like this conversation was just like there is some kind of like AI company that's trying to make an online job portal,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, using AI to like find better suits for you and blah blah blah. Part of me is thinking like, okay, that's super helpful because there's so many like job boards that are out there that maybe we aren't aware about, because the way that if you're just using Google for what it is, people pay for SEOs or pay for their things to be up first, and so it just takes a long time to like rummage through it. So why not have a platform that is trained on just looking at job applications and job boards and doing the work of matching people together? But then the overarching dark lord question is just like, oh, but then we're giving this company full autonomy to kind of like be the dictator of like what
Right.
they think is like the what are the jobs that are out there? What are the companies that are more valuable? Like, even though, like, the thing that's scary or concerning that, like, my friend that works with the dog whistle AI company talks about is just kind of like AI, generative AI is shown to be a very well-powered, productive, or whatever, like a very well-powered tool. But like what the input is and what the output is, it's a black box of the process on how it does it. And that's where like the miscommunications can happen, the biases kind of happen. Like there's no control over the process of like, this is the input that we're putting in the box, in like the bounding boxes that we're putting to train our model. And this is the output of it. And so I think that's where the concern is, because there are now places where like, you can't tell it to stop. You can't tell it to do these things because there's no way to stop the process of like, just of like how generative AI kind of works.
Right.
And so I don't know. We're in some weird times. It makes me think of like you and I of just like, okay, we started the SciComm podcast. We're trying to like talk to people about like, we want to pose ourselves as like these experts in science, in the science of science communication. But it's like we are in some really unique things that we're just like, we're in it for the ride. Like the theories that we learned on, the research that we worked on, like the stuff that we have done prior to this, like I feel like it's no longer going to apply as we enter into this new era of like whatever the heck era that we're going into.
Right. Now you have to start looking into a lot of things on like algorithms and how like algorithms are such strong tools to like disseminate misinformation. Can I actually like wrap it up with something that I've heard Dietram Scheufele say on the stage on National Academies of Sciences? And he was talking about like, we were like talking about like all the ways you combat misinformation, right? And like people should do this, people should do that, we should create content like this. And one of the things he was saying was that when like the guy who's like a chess champion like loses to this like AI powered chess player, right? You're not like, well, you should have been smarter and faster and everything. Like like you can't beat that. You just can't. So when we say like combating misinformation and here's what we should do and here's the content and here's how you consume it, it's like, no, this is probably more about like the algorithms and the social media and the people that are pushing the agendas and the new things that I was looking at, how I think New York Post or Washington Post were like showing it, how like they have this like different groups that start using TikTok, and some of it use like, I can't remember, like half an hour a day, and there's this other group that uses it like 4 hours a day, and the content that they're getting is kind of like, it's basically experimenting until in a month the people that were using it half an hour are now using it like 2 hours, and the 4-hour people are still 4 hour. So there is this AI powered algorithm and everything constantly manipulating you to make these decisions. So I can be a better consumer, I can be a better science communicator, I can create content. Unless we have more rules and ethics and ways to keep these places and organizations and everything responsible, like it's like very hard to control anything. So policy.
I know. I know. I think like are we just going to like enter into our solar punk era? You know, first we used to make fun of the trad wives, but now like trad wives is like the goal. Like we just want to be like, I just want to grow things in my garden and not look at like my social media, you know? So well, anyways, right. Thank you I'm glad that we were able to actually have a full podcast on AI. We've had like some people submit to the hotline that we just like never answered. So maybe we should like next episode, we should just have like just answer those questions. But please, friends, thanks for listening, and send us your ideas, send us your gossip, whatever existential questions you guys have. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.